6 years ago, my sister took away my millionaire fiancé, the man I was meant to marry. Now, at our mother's funeral, she showed up with him, flaunting her diamond ring, and sneered, "Poor you, still single at 38. I got the man, the fortune, and the mansion." I just smiled, looked at her, and said, "Oh, have you met my husband yet?" When I called him over, her face turned ghostly white, because, in truth, my husband was. Can you imagine standing at your own mother's funeral, knowing the woman who stole your fiancé and shattered your life is about to walk in? 6 years of silent fury, and then, a moment of pure, unexpected calm. Because my conniving sister had no idea who was waiting to meet her that day. I'm Rebecca. And for a long time, I never imagined my life would turn out this way. My mom, Eleanor, she was the glue that held us together. Growing up outside Boston in our modest suburban home, she taught me everything about strength, about dignity. We had this incredible bond, and it only deepened over the years. Even when I moved into my own downtown Boston apartment, building my career as a marketing executive, I called her almost every single day. She was my confidant, my advisor, my biggest cheerleader. So when she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 8 months ago, my world just crumbled. We knew time was limited, no matter the aggressive treatments. But Mom faced it all with this incredible grace, more worried about us than herself. Her final weeks were peaceful, surrounded by loved ones in the home she'd raised us in. She slipped away holding my hand, after making me promise to find peace in my life. A promise I struggled to keep. 6 years before all this, I was 32, and my life, on paper, looked perfect. Great career, amazing friends, a beautiful apartment. But something was missing. I was working 60-hour weeks, dating here and there, but nothing ever stuck. Then, at a charity gala, my college friend Allison introduced me to Nathan Reynolds. He was charismatic, had perfect teeth, and this confidence that just filled the room. A self-made tech millionaire at 36. The kind of success story you read in magazines. Our connection was instant. We both loved art, traveling, and chasing ambitious goals. After our first date, at an exclusive restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor, I called Mom and told her I'd finally met someone truly special. Our relationship took off like a rocket. Weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, box seats at the symphony, intimate dinners, it became our normal. Nathan was so attentive, so generous. Always thoughtful gifts, elaborate dates. After 18 incredible months, during a private dinner on a yacht right there in Boston Harbor, he proposed. A 5-carat diamond ring. I said yes without a second thought. My parents were ecstatic, especially Mom. She immediately started envisioning the perfect wedding. Nathan had the resources to make any dream come true, and Mom insisted we shouldn't hold back. Then there was Stephanie, my younger sister, just 2 years my junior. We had always had a complicated relationship. As kids, we were close, but there was this constant, underlying competition. Stephanie always wanted what I had, from toys to friends to attention. If I achieved something, she had to match it, or even exceed it. Mom always tried to keep the peace, making sure we each got special time. Despite our history, I chose Stephanie as my maid of honor. Mom said it would bring us closer, and I desperately wanted to believe that, as adults, we'd moved past childish jealousy. When I introduced Stephanie to Nathan at a family dinner, she complimented him excessively. I noticed her touching his arm, laughing a little too much at his jokes. But I dismissed it. That's just Stephanie, I thought, being her usual charming self. Later, at our engagement party, held at my parents' colonial home, Stephanie helped Mom with the decorations, stringing fairy lights, arranging flowers. Throughout the evening, I caught her watching Nathan across the room. But each time our eyes met, she'd quickly smile and raise her glass to me. As guests were leaving that night, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Rebecca, dear," she said carefully, arranging leftover appetizers. "I notice Stephanie seems quite taken with Nathan." "She's just being friendly, Mom," I replied, washing champagne flutes. Besides, she's dating that pharmaceutical rep, Brian. Mom nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Just be careful, honey. You know how your sister can get when you have something she admires. I kissed her cheek, assured her everything was fine. Asterisk, we're adults now, Mom. Stephanie's happy for me. I'm sure of it. Asterisk, how wrong I was. How painfully, devastatingly wrong. Then, just 3 months before our wedding, I started noticing subtle, unsettling changes in Nathan. He was working later, answering texts at odd hours, always with excuses about international clients. Our usual Friday date nights? Suddenly, emergency meetings popped up, rescheduling constantly. When we were together, he felt distant, distracted. His phone was a constant presence, pulling his attention away from our conversations. Worse, he started criticizing things he once loved about me. My laugh was too loud in public. My favorite blue dress, the one you used to adore, now made me look washed out. Even my habit of reading before bed, which he'd once found endearing, became annoying because the light kept him awake. Meanwhile, Stephanie started calling more frequently. Always with questions about wedding details. I just want everything to be perfect for my big sister, she'd chirp. Even though Mom was handling most of the planning, Stephanie volunteered to help with vendor meetings I couldn't attend because of work. She was so helpful. One Thursday evening, Nathan and I were having dinner at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. He barely made eye contact, responding to my stories with one-word answers. When his phone buzzed for the 5th time, I finally snapped. Is there something more important happening elsewhere? I asked, trying to keep my voice light, but the irritation was boiling. Sorry, just work stuff, he muttered, flipping his phone face down. You know how it is before a product launch. Later that week, doing laundry, I noticed an unfamiliar perfume on Nathan's collar. Floral and heavy. Definitely not mine. When I confronted him, he explained he'd been in meetings with a potential investor, a Rebecca Mills who apparently wore overpowering perfume and gave huggy goodbyes. It sounded plausible. I wanted to believe him. The next morning, over coffee, I expressed my concerns to Allison. Every relationship gets jittery before the wedding, she reassured me, stirring her latte. Parker and I fought constantly the month before ours, and we've been married 5 years. But the knot in my stomach wouldn't dissolve. Mom noticed my anxiety during our weekly lunch. You seem distracted, sweetheart, she'd said, touching my hand. Wedding stress, or something else? I forced a smile. Just busy with the final arrangements. Everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine. I tried harder, thinking maybe I was taking Nathan for granted. Spa day. New lingerie. Cooking his favorite meals. The more I tried, the more distant he became. Then came the cake tasting appointment, something Nathan had been looking forward to for weeks. That morning, he called, claiming an unexpected meeting. Stephanie can go with you, he suggested. She knows my preferences anyway. When I hung up, I felt sick. How did my sister know my fiancé's cake preferences better than I did? Still, I accepted her offer to join me. The next day, cleaning Nathan's car before a dinner party, I found an earring. Wedged between the passenger seat and the center console. A dangling silver earring with a tiny sapphire. I recognized it instantly. Stephanie's. She'd worn those to my engagement party, a gift from our grandmother. When I showed Nathan the earring that evening, his face remained perfectly composed. Oh, your sister must have dropped it when I gave her a ride to the florist last week, he said smoothly. She mentioned losing an earring. You never told me you drove Stephanie to the florist, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Didn't I? It must have slipped my mind. It wasn't important. When I called Stephanie, her explanation matched his perfectly. Too perfectly. Oh, thank goodness. I've been looking everywhere for that earring. Nathan was kind enough to drive me since my car was in the shop. That night, I couldn't sleep. Thoughts raced. Had they rehearsed their story? Was I going completely insane? My weight started dropping from the stress. Dark circles formed under my eyes. I started seeing a therapist, secretly. 3 weeks before the wedding, Nathan suggested we postpone. I'm worried about you, Rebecca. You're not yourself lately. Maybe we're rushing things. I broke down, begging him to tell me what was wrong. What had I done? How could I fix it? He held me, assuring me everything was fine. But his eyes were vacant. That night, I woke at 3 a.m. Nathan's side of the bed was empty. From the hallway, I heard his hushed voice coming from the guest bedroom. Not now. She'll hear us. I know. Soon, I promise. The next day, I decided to surprise Nathan at his office with lunch. My father, Thomas, called just as I was leaving my apartment. Rebecca, are you eating properly? Your mother says you've lost too much weight. We're concerned. I'm fine, Dad, I lied. Just pre-wedding jitters. I'm actually bringing Nathan lunch right now. Good, he boomed. That boy better be treating my daughter like a queen. If only he knew. The security guard at Nathan's building recognized me, waved me through with a smile. On the elevator ride up to the 12th floor, I checked my reflection, trying to smooth out the worry lines etched between my eyebrows. The lunch bag held Nathan's favorite sandwich from the deli across from my office. When I reached reception, Margot, Nathan's secretary, looked up, her eyes widening. Rebecca! We weren't expecting you today. Her gaze darted to Nathan's closed office door, then back to me. Nathan is in a meeting right now. That's okay, I said, lifting the lunch bag. I just brought him lunch. I can wait. Margot stood quickly, blocking my path. Actually, he specifically asked not to be disturbed. Perhaps I could let him know you're here? Something in her nervous manner triggered every alarm bell. Is he alone in there, Margot? Her hesitation told me everything. Before she could respond, I pushed past her and threw open Nathan's office door. The scene burned into my memory forever. Nathan, leaning against his desk, his hands on my sister's waist. Stephanie, her arms wrapped around his neck, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. Neither noticed me at first, giving me several excruciating seconds to absorb every detail. Stephanie's skirt pushed up. Nathan's tie loosened. The familiarity in their embrace that spoke of countless similar moments. When the door clicked shut behind me, they sprang apart. 3 faces frozen in a tableau of shock. Rebecca! Nathan recovered first, straightening his tie. This isn't what it looks like. Stephanie didn't even attempt such a transparent lie. Instead, she lifted her chin defiantly. We didn't plan this. It just happened. The calm that washed over me was surprising. Bone-chilling calm. How long? I asked. Nathan glanced at Stephanie, then back to me. Rebecca, let's discuss this privately. How long? My voice remained steady. For months, Stephanie answered. Since the engagement party. 4 months. Nearly half our engagement. While I'd been selecting wedding invitations and choosing floral arrangements, they had been betraying me. Nathan moved behind his desk, distancing himself physically, as if preparing for a business negotiation. I didn't mean for this to happen, Rebecca. Sometimes feelings change. I was going to tell you after. After what? I spat. After the wedding? After our honeymoon? I was trying to find the right time. His voice had the practiced smoothness he used for difficult client meetings. The lunch bag dropped from my hand. A wet thud. I trusted you. Both of you. Stephanie, at least, had the decency to look uncomfortable. It just happened, Becca. We tried to fight it. Don't call me Becca. That childhood nickname felt like another violation. Nothing just happens for 4 months. You made choices. Every secret call, every lie, every time you looked me in the eye, knowing what you were doing. Nathan pressed the intercom button. Margot, please come in. Moments later, Margot appeared, pointedly avoiding my gaze. Please escort Rebecca out. She's upset. I'm escorting myself out, I said, my dignity somehow intact despite feeling utterly shattered inside. You deserve each other. In the elevator, the tears finally came. By the time I reached my car, I was gasping for breath between sobs. The drive home? A total blur. I only remember calling my mom from my apartment, curled on the bathroom floor, unable to form coherent sentences through my crying. Mom and Dad arrived within the hour, using their emergency key. Mom held me while I spilled everything. Dad paced the living room, his face getting redder with every detail. I'll kill him, he muttered, hand over his heart. Both of them. Thomas, your blood pressure, Mom warned, though her own face was etched with fury. The next days passed in a haze of raw pain. Mom helped me call vendors, cancel arrangements. Dad handled the financial fallout. When I returned the engagement ring, leaving it with Nathan's doorman, I just couldn't bear to see him. But I found Stephanie had already moved her things in. Her clothes were there. Family photos, their family photos, arranged on shelves that once held mine. Nathan's email about dividing our shared assets was coldly efficient, mentioning Stephanie had helped him catalog my remaining belongings. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever realized. Through mutual friends, I pieced it together. They'd been meeting secretly whenever I worked late or traveled. Stephanie had pursued him deliberately, finding excuses to see him alone, sending texts and photos when I wasn't around. The scandal ripped through our social circle. Some friends sided with me. Others, with Nathan, citing his influence in the business community. Several even admitted they'd noticed flirtation, but didn't want to get involved. Their cowardice stung almost as much as the betrayal itself. Mom became my lifeline during those dark months. She brought food when I couldn't eat, listened to my tearful rants, and stayed overnight when the loneliness became unbearable. She tried repeatedly to mediate between Stephanie and me, inviting us both to family dinners that inevitably ended in tense silence or bitter arguments. During one such dinner, Stephanie snapped after I refused to pass her the salt. You always got everything first, Rebecca. The grades, the job, the apartment. For once, I got something before you did. My fiancé wasn't a prize to be won, I shot back, my voice shaking. He was the man I loved and trusted. Mom put her fork down. Stephanie Marie Thompson. Apologize to your sister right now. For what? Being honest? Nathan chose me. He loves me now. I stood up, my napkin thrown onto my plate. I can't do this anymore. Mom, I'm sorry. It was the last family dinner I attended with Stephanie present. Dad's heart problems worsened from the stress of our feud. More medication. More doctor visits. Mom aged years and months, the lines around her eyes deepening as she desperately tried to hold her family together. 6 months after discovering Nathan and Stephanie's betrayal, I hit rock bottom. My therapist diagnosed me with depression. Recommended medication. My work suffered. I struggled to focus, eventually losing a major client after a disastrous presentation where I just broke down crying. My boss suggested a leave of absence. But I knew staying in Boston, where memories lurked around every single corner, would only prolong my suffering. When a marketing director position opened in our Chicago branch, I applied immediately. The interview went surprisingly well, my desperation for change, perhaps, read as enthusiasm. 2 weeks later, I got the offer. Mom helped me pack my apartment, carefully wrapping photos and mementos in tissue paper. As we sorted through my belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate, she finally broached the subject that hung heavy between us. "Will you ever consider forgiving Stephanie?" she asked softly, sealing a box with packing tape. I continued folding sweaters without looking up. "I don't know, Mom. Not now. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't about them deserving it," she said. "It's about freeing yourself." "I am freeing myself," I said. "I'm moving to Chicago." Mom sat beside me on the bed, taking my hands in hers. "Running away isn't the same as healing, sweetheart." Tears filled my eyes. "I need space to even begin to heal. Can you understand that?" She nodded, pulling me into a tight hug. "Promise you'll call. Promise you won't shut us out completely." "I promise." Saying goodbye to my parents was harder than I anticipated. Dad held me longer than usual, his voice gruff with emotion. "You show them, kiddo. Build a life so good they'll choke on their regret." My first weeks in Chicago were brutally lonely. My studio apartment felt sterile, unfamiliar. I worked absurdly long hours, just to avoid going home to empty rooms. Takeout at my desk, collapsing into bed exhausted every night. Then came the news that twisted the knife deeper. Mom called one Sunday morning, her voice cautious. "Rebecca," she began, "I feel you should hear this from me, rather than social media. Stephanie and Nathan got married yesterday." A small civil ceremony, featured in Boston Magazine's society pages, Nathan's connections ensured coverage despite the modest scale. The photo showed them beaming outside the courthouse. Stephanie, wearing a simple white dress, and my former engagement ring, prominently displayed on her finger. That night was my absolute lowest point. I drank an entire bottle of wine alone, scrolled through old photos of Nathan and me, and cried until my eyes were swollen shut. I called in sick the next day, unable to face the world. But something shifted during those dark hours. As morning light filtered through my blinds, I made a decision. This would be the last day I gave them power over my happiness. I deleted every photo of Nathan from my phone, blocked both him and Stephanie on social media, and took a long shower, visualizing my pain washing away down the drain. At work, I threw myself into projects with a renewed, fierce focus. My boss noticed the change, assigning me to more significant clients. I quickly earned a reputation for creativity and dedication, gaining respect in my new office. My first real Chicago friend was Madison Reynolds, our HR director, who invited me to join her book club. Through her, I met other women, slowly building a social circle. Madison frequently tried to set me up on dates, but I declined every offer. The thought of romantic vulnerability was still terrifying. For months into my new life, I was sent to a tech conference in San Francisco to represent our company. On the second evening, at a business dinner with potential clients, I was seated next to Zachary Foster, a tech investor and entrepreneur who'd recently relocated from Seattle. Zachary was different from Nathan in every single way. Nathan was flashy and charming. Zachary was understated, genuine. His quiet confidence and thoughtful questions drew people in without demanding attention. When he spoke about his work, his passion was evident, never boastful. He asked for my card after dinner. I gave it, without expectation. To my surprise, he emailed the next morning, asking if I'd like to continue our conversation over coffee before the day's sessions. Over the next 3 months, Zachary and I maintained professional contact. He referred clients to my agency, I introduced him to my Chicago business connections. Madison, ever observant, noticed our frequent work lunches and raised an eyebrow. "He likes you, Rebecca. And not just professionally." "We're just colleagues," I insisted. "Colleagues don't look at each other the way he looks at you," she retorted. Eventually, Zachary asked me to dinner at a restaurant unrelated to work. I panicked. Almost cancelled twice before forcing myself to go. 20 minutes into the date, discussing our favorite books, I had a full-blown panic attack. My hands shook, breathing became difficult, tears welled up. Instead of being embarrassed or annoyed, Zachary moved to sit beside me, speaking calmly until my breathing normalized. He drove me home, no pressure, no questions. The next day, flowers arrived at my office with a note, no pressure, no expectations. Just hoping you're feeling better. Zachary. That evening, I called him. I shared everything about Nathan and Stephanie. He listened without interruption. Then, he shared his own story of heartbreak. His past marriage ended when his wife left him for his business partner, taking half their joint company. Broken trust leaves scars, he said gently. Anyone worth your time will understand that healing isn't linear. Over the following months, we built a foundation of friendship first. Zachary never pushed for more than I could give, respecting my boundaries while remaining steadfastly present. For our 5th date, he cooked dinner at his apartment instead of taking me to a crowded restaurant that might trigger my anxiety. When panic occasionally resurfaced, he knew exactly how to help me through it. For the first time since Nathan, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, trust was possible again. 1 year after moving to Chicago, I barely recognized my life. My promotion to senior marketing director came with a corner office overlooking the river. My circle of friends had expanded. And, most surprisingly, I had fallen deeply in love with Zachary. Unlike Nathan's flashy courtship, Zachary's love manifested in consistent, thoughtful ways. He remembered small details, how I preferred oat milk in my coffee, which true crime podcasts I followed. He respected my independence while offering unwavering support. Most importantly, he never compared me to anyone else or tried to change me. I met Zachary's sister, Caroline, during her visit from Portland. We connected instantly, building our own friendship independent of Zachary. She told me stories of their childhood in Seattle, painting a vivid picture of the boy who became the man I was growing to love. My relationship with my parents continued from a distance. I called Mom weekly, carefully steering conversations away from Stephanie. Dad occasionally joined, his gruff voice softening when he told me how proud he was of my fresh start. I visited twice that year, timing my trips when I knew Stephanie and Nathan would be away. Mom provided occasional updates. Their marriage appeared perfect on social media, Stephanie posting photos of luxury vacations and charity galas. According to Mom, they'd bought a large house in Beacon Hill, renovating extensively. Stephanie asks about you sometimes, Mom mentioned during one call. What do you tell her? I asked, stirring pasta sauce on my stove. That you're doing well, that you're building a new life. Does she ever express regret? Mom sighed, in her way. She gets quiet when your name comes up. My therapy continued in Chicago, my new therapist helping me process the betrayal and build healthier relationship patterns. I learned to recognize my triggers and communicate boundaries effectively. Slowly, the nightmares about Nathan and Stephanie faded. In June, Zachary surprised me with a weekend trip to Michigan's wine country. We stayed at a charming bed and breakfast, spent afternoons wine tasting, evenings watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. For the first time in years, I felt completely present, completely happy, without the shadow of past betrayal hanging over me. On our last evening, walking through a garden filled with early summer blooms at the Chicago Botanic Garden, Zachary stopped beneath a trellis covered in climbing roses. Rebecca, he said, taking both my hands in his. This past year, knowing you has been the greatest gift of my life. When he knelt, producing a ring box, panic flashed briefly. Images of Nathan's proposal threatened to overshadow this moment. But looking into Zachary's eyes, I saw only sincerity and love. I'm not asking for an answer today, he said, seeming to read my hesitation. I just want you to know that whenever you're ready, whether that's tomorrow or next year, I'll be here. Tears filled my eyes, but not from fear or pain. Yes, I whispered. I'm ready now. The ring was nothing like the ostentatious diamond Nathan had given me. A simple emerald with small diamonds on either side, elegant and understated, like our relationship. That night, I called my parents with the news. Mom cried happy tears. He sounds wonderful, darling. When can we meet him? Soon, I promised. Very soon. We planned a small wedding, only 30 guests, at a historic Chicago venue. At Mom's urging, I sent Stephanie an invitation, more as a gesture toward healing than an expectation of attendance. Her response came via email, brief and cold: "Congratulations on your engagement. Unfortunately, Nathan and I have prior commitments on that date. Best wishes for your future." Mom was disappointed, but unsurprised. Give her time, Rebecca. This is progress compared to where you both were. Our wedding day arrived, intimate and joyful, with my parents, new friends, and Zachary's family in attendance. Dad walked me down the aisle, whispering, "I haven't seen you this happy in years, kiddo." Zachary's vows acknowledged our journey. Rebecca, I promise to remember that love is both strong and fragile, requiring care and commitment every day. I promise to be worthy of the trust you've given me, knowing how precious and hard-won that gift is. We built our life together in Chicago, buying a brownstone we renovated together. My career continued advancing, eventually leading to a vice president position. Zachary's investment firm grew, focusing on supporting women-led tech startups. Then, during a dinner with business associates, I learned something that connected past to present. A venture capitalist mentioned working with Nathan years earlier. Reynolds? Yeah, he and Foster had quite the rivalry in the angel investing space about 7 years back. Foster backed the right startup. Reynolds backed the competitor. Foster's pick got acquired for millions. Reynolds went bankrupt. Later that night, I asked Zachary about this connection. I was going to tell you eventually, he admitted. I knew who you were when we met. Not the details of what happened, but that you had been engaged to Reynolds. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. I wanted you to know me for me, not as someone connected to your past. I wasn't angry. Somehow, the cosmic symmetry felt right. 2 years into our marriage, we began trying for a baby. Months passed without success, leading to fertility specialists and difficult conversations. Through disappointments and medical procedures, Zachary remained my rock, holding me through tears and reminding me that family comes in many forms. Then came the devastating call about Mom's cancer diagnosis. Zachary and I flew to Boston immediately, meeting with oncologists, helping my parents navigate treatment options. Mom put on a brave face, but the cancer was aggressive and had already spread. I took a leave from work to care for her, moving temporarily back to my childhood home. Zachary flew in every weekend, supporting both me and my increasingly frail father. In her final weeks, Mom and I had precious conversations about life, love, and family. One evening, as I adjusted her pillows, she broached the subject of Stephanie. I wish you girls could find peace with each other, she said, her voice weak but determined. Life is too short for such distance between sisters. I know, Mom, I replied, swallowing back tears. Promise me you'll try, Rebecca. Not for her, but for yourself, and maybe a little bit for your old mother. I promised, not knowing if I could keep it, but desperate to give her peace. Mom passed peacefully 3 days later, Zachary, Dad, and I at her bedside. I called Stephanie immediately, the first direct communication we'd had in years. Mom's gone, I said when she answered. Her sharp intake of breath was the only sound for several seconds. I'll be there in an hour, she finally replied, her voice breaking. The morning of Mom's funeral dawned gray and drizzly, fitting the somber occasion. I stood before the mirror in my childhood bedroom, adjusting my black dress, wondering how I would possibly survive the day. Zachary appeared behind me, handsome in his dark suit, placing his hands gently on my shoulders. I'm right beside you today, he said, meeting my eyes in the reflection. Whatever happens. Downstairs, Dad sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his untouched coffee. The past week had hollowed him out. His tall frame, once so strong, was stooped with grief. At 72, he seemed to have aged a decade since Mom's diagnosis. "Ready, Dad?" I asked softly, touching his shoulder. He nodded, rising slowly. Eleanor always said funerals aren't for the dead, they're for the living. Never understood that until now. The funeral home was already filling with extended family and friends. When we arrived, I stayed close to Dad, greeting people with mechanical smiles, accepting condolences from faces I barely recognized. Cousins from California. Mom's college roommate. Neighbors from their 40 years in the home. "You look just like Eleanor at your age," my great-aunt Patricia said, patting my cheek. "She would be proud of the woman you've become." "How have you been, dear?" asked Mom's friend Judith. "Eleanor mentioned you moved away." "Chicago, was it?" "Yes," I replied, "almost 5 years now." I didn't add that my sister's betrayal had prompted the move. As I guided Dad to his seat in the front row, Zachary at his other side, a murmur rippled through the gathering. I turned. And there they were. Stephanie and Nathan entering, their appearance causing heads to turn and whispers to spread. Stephanie wore an expensive black dress that highlighted her slender figure, diamond earrings catching the light. Nathan looked utterly uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit, his arm around my sister's waist in a show of support. And her left hand? It rested prominently on her purse, that massive diamond engagement ring and wedding band impossible to miss. Dad stiffened beside me. "Thomas, breathe," I whispered, concerned about his heart. They made their way forward, stopping to speak with various attendees. I kept my eyes fixed front, focusing on the large photo of Mom displayed beside her closed casket, her warm smile easing some of my anxiety. Eventually, they reached the front. Stephanie embraced Dad, who returned the hug stiffly. Nathan shook his hand, receiving only a curt nod in response. "Rebecca," Stephanie said, turning to me, an expression I couldn't quite read on her face. "It's been a long time." "Yes," I replied simply, not trusting myself with more words. Nathan nodded awkwardly. "Sorry for your loss." Zachary had stepped away a moment earlier to speak with the funeral director, leaving me momentarily alone with them. Stephanie seized the opportunity. "I need to speak with you privately," she said, gesturing toward a side room. Against my better judgment, wanting to avoid a scene at Mom's funeral, I followed her. The small room contained only a few chairs and a box of tissues, clearly designated for mourners needing private moments. Stephanie closed the door behind us. Up close, I noticed fine lines around her eyes that her expensive makeup couldn't quite conceal. "You look thin," she remarked, her gaze assessing me critically. "Grief does that," I replied flatly. She fiddled with her ring, twisting it around her finger. "Nathan and I bought a summer house on Cape Cod last month. 8 bedrooms. Private beach access." I remained silent, wondering why she felt compelled to share this information now, here. "We're considering starting a family soon," she continued. "Nathan's company just acquired 2 startups, and we're renovating the 3rd floor for a nursery." "Congratulations," I said, my voice utterly devoid of emotion. "Is there something specific you wanted to discuss about the funeral arrangements?" Her smile turned sharp, malicious. "I just thought you might want to know how well we're doing." "Poor you, still alone at 38. I got the man, the money, and the mansion." The familiar pain flared briefly. And then, surprisingly, it subsided. 6 years ago, her words would have devastated me. Today, they just sounded pathetic. Desperate. I smiled genuinely. "Have you met my husband yet?" Her expression faltered. "Husband?" "Zachary," I called, opening the door to find him waiting nearby. "Come meet my sister." As Zachary entered the room, Nathan appeared behind him, clearly having been watching our interaction. The men's eyes met. Nathan's face drained of all color. "Foster," he said, his confident demeanor cracking. "Reynolds." Zachary's tone remained professional, but cool. "It's been what, 7 years? Not since Macintosh acquired Innotech instead of your client CompuServe, right?" Nathan swallowed visibly. "You two are married?" "2 wonderful years now," I confirmed, slipping my hand into Zachary's. "Zachary Foster," Stephanie repeated slowly, disbelief in her voice. "As in Foster Investments?" "The same," Zachary replied. "Rebecca and I met at a tech conference in San Francisco." Nathan attempted to recover his composure. "Foster, we should catch up sometime. I've been meaning to reach out about potential collaborations." "My schedule's quite full," Zachary replied pleasantly, but firmly. "But you can contact my office if you'd like." The funeral director appeared, informing us the service was about to begin. As we returned to the main room, whispers followed us. The connection between Zachary and Nathan was clearly known in business circles. We had just taken our seats when Dad clutched his chest, his face contorting in pain. "Dad!" I cried as Zachary immediately called for help. We moved Dad to a private room, the funeral temporarily delayed. A doctor among the attendees examined him, determining it was likely stress, not another heart attack. Stephanie followed us, genuine concern on her face. "Is he okay? Should we call an ambulance?" Her voice shook slightly. "The doctor says he's stable," I replied, surprised by her sincerity. "Just overwhelmed." For 20 minutes, we sat together in awkward silence, united only by concern for our father. When he insisted on proceeding with the service, we returned to the main room. The brief crisis creating an unexpected truce. The funeral itself was beautiful and heartbreaking. I delivered a eulogy highlighting Mom's kindness, strength, and unwavering love for her family. When Stephanie rose to speak after me, she faltered after only a few sentences, tears overwhelming her. Without thinking, I moved to her side, placing a supportive hand on her back. "It's okay," I whispered. "Take your time." She gathered herself, completing her tribute to our mother with stories from our childhood that brought both tears and gentle laughter from the attendees. At the cemetery, rain fell softly as we laid Mom to rest. I noticed Nathan standing apart from the main group, checking his watch repeatedly. Stephanie remained by Dad's side, her earlier bravado replaced by genuine grief. The reception at my parents' house was crowded with well-wishers, bringing casseroles, sharing memories. Nathan drank heavily, his discomfort evident as several business associates engaged Zachary in animated conversation. I overheard fragments about Nathan's company struggling with recent acquisitions and wondered if Stephanie's boasting had been covering financial troubles. Throughout the day, I maintained the dignity Mom would have expected, focusing on supporting Dad and honoring her memory rather than dwelling on old wounds. As guests began departing, I caught Stephanie watching me from across the room, her expression unreadable but somehow softer than before. The day after the funeral, Zachary needed to return to Chicago for an important board meeting. "Are you sure you'll be okay if I go?" he asked, packing his overnight bag. "I can reschedule." "Dad needs help sorting through Mom's things," I explained. "I should stay a few more days." "I'll be fine." After seeing Zachary off at the airport, I returned to my parents' house. Dad was sitting in Mom's garden, a photo album open on his lap. "She labeled everything," he said, showing me Mom's neat handwriting beneath each photo. Said, "Someday we'd appreciate knowing who was who." That afternoon, I began the painful task of sorting through Mom's closet. Each dress held memories, the blue one from my college graduation, the floral print she wore to Sunday brunches, the elegant gray she'd chosen for my engagement party. I found myself talking to her as I worked, telling her about my life in Chicago, my work, my happiness with Zachary. In her bedside drawer, I discovered a journal, bound in soft leather. Inside, Mom had written periodic entries over the past decade. Many mentioned her daughters, her hopes for our reconciliation, her sadness at the rift between us. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks before her death, read, "My greatest regret is leaving with my girls still estranged. Eleanor always fixed things, but I couldn't fix this. I pray they find their way back to each other somehow." The doorbell rang as I wiped away tears. Through the front window, I saw Stephanie standing alone on the porch. No sign of Nathan's car. Dad had gone to his brother's house for dinner, leaving me to face my sister alone. I opened the door, uncertain what to expect. "Hi," she said simply. "Can I come in?" In the kitchen, I made coffee while Stephanie sat silently at the table. She looked different without Nathan beside her. Smaller, somehow. Less artificially composed. "Where's Nathan?" I finally asked, placing a mug before her. "At home? He doesn't know I'm here." She wrapped her hands around the mug, but didn't drink. I told him I needed space after the funeral. The silence stretched between us. Years of unspoken words, creating an almost physical barrier. "I'm sorry about yesterday," she finally said. "What I said in that room at the funeral home. It was cruel. And completely inappropriate." I nodded, acknowledging her apology without immediately accepting it. "I saw Mom's journal," she continued. "Dad showed it to me last night. Her last wish was for us to reconcile." "I found it, too," I replied. "But reconciliation requires more than just proximity, Stephanie. It needs honesty." She looked up, tears filling her eyes. "You want honesty? Here's honesty. I'm miserable, Rebecca. Have been almost since the beginning. The dam broke then." Words pouring out between sobs. Nathan had changed shortly after their wedding, becoming controlling and critical. His business had been struggling for years. Each new acquisition, each attempt, was just to save a sinking ship. The houses, the cars, the vacations? All leveraged on mounting debt. Their marriage was a carefully constructed facade, maintained for business connections and social standing. He monitors my spending. Checks my phone. Questions my every movement, she admitted. The Nathan you knew doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. "Why stay?" I asked. "Shame," she answered immediately. "How could I admit what I'd done to you? Destroyed our family for something that turned out to be a mirage. And then there's the prenup. I leave with nothing." I pushed Mom's journal across the table. "Read the rest of her entries." As Stephanie read, fresh tears flowed. She looked up eventually, her face raw with emotion. She knew. She saw through everything. "Mom always did," I agreed. "I've hated myself for years," Stephanie whispered. "Every time Mom mentioned you, every accomplishment of yours she proudly shared, I felt the weight of what I'd done. I'm planning to leave him, Rebecca. I've been secretly consulting a lawyer." My feelings were complicated. Vindication mixed with unexpected compassion. The sister who had caused me such pain was suffering consequences I wouldn't have wished on anyone. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know the truth before I blow up my life again." We spent the next hours looking through Mom's belongings together, sharing memories both painful and precious. Stephanie recalled Mom teaching us to bake cookies, how she never mixed the separate batches because I liked chocolate chip and Stephanie preferred sugar cookies. "Remember how she used to leave notes in our lunchboxes?" Stephanie asked, smiling through tears. "Different messages every day." I nodded. She never repeated one. We weren't instantly healed, the wounds too deep for immediate closure. But as evening fell, something had shifted between us. Mom's love creating a fragile bridge across years of hurt. What will you do? I asked, as Stephanie prepared to leave. File for divorce when my lawyer says the timing is right. Rent a small apartment. Start over. She paused at the door. What about you? Will you go back to Chicago? Yes, I said. My life is there now, with Zachary. You seem happy, she said. A statement rather than a question. I am truly happy. I'm glad one of us should be. We hugged briefly, awkwardly, before she left. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. Back in Chicago, I settled into life with Zachary, our brownstone, and my rewarding career. 6 months after Mom's funeral, I discovered I was pregnant, after years of trying. The joy was tempered with sadness that Mom wouldn't meet her grandchild, but I felt her presence in quiet moments. Stephanie and I maintained cautious contact through occasional phone calls. She had filed for divorce and moved into a modest apartment, finding work at a small marketing firm. The gossip and judgment she faced in Boston's social circles was difficult, but she seemed determined to rebuild authentically. The path that led me here was never one I would have chosen. Losing Nathan had seemed like the end of my world, but it had actually been the beginning of a far better one. With Zachary, I found not just love, but partnership, respect, and unwavering support. His success never overshadowed mine, but complemented it. Each of us growing stronger together. Mom had been right about forgiveness being for ourselves rather than others. The weight of anger and resentment had lifted gradually, allowing me to see my past with clarity and my future with hope. The scars remained, but they no longer defined me. As I sat in our nursery, Zachary painting the walls a soft green, I thought about the lessons I would someday share with our child. How loss can lead to finding. How endings create space for beginnings. How the hardest moments often direct us toward our truest path. My life had become richer and more authentic than I could have imagined during those dark days 6 years ago. Not despite the betrayal, but because of how it forced me to rebuild with greater wisdom and intention. Have you ever experienced a painful loss that eventually led you to something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who might need to hear that pain doesn't get the final word in their story. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most difficult chapters lead to the most beautiful endings. Leave a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and unexpected blessings.